The first thing I saw that morning was the empty chair he'd left behind, still holding the shape of last night's anger, and the shadow of a hand I can't forget. If my story touched something in you today, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you're here for the next chapter. The first thing I saw that morning was the empty chair he'd left behind, still holding the shape of last night's anger, and the shadow of a hand I can't forget. I woke slowly, the way older bones often insist you do, easing into the day rather than rushing it. My house was quiet in that particular way homes get after years of routine. The kettle would usually be whistling by now, my slippers waiting by the side of the bed, the soft scent of lavender rising from the sachet I kept tucked in my drawer. These were my small anchors, my rituals, my comforts. I wrapped myself in my worn robe, feeling its familiar softness against my skin. It had weathered winters with me, survived countless mornings of spilled tea, grief, and the gentle return of joy. I shuffled into the kitchen, expecting the usual hum of ordinary life. What I found instead was absence. The driveway outside was empty. Not just empty, wiped clean by the night's rain, as if no car had ever sat there at all. The impression of tires, the scattered leaves, even the damp footprints that should have followed his steps, all gone. And on the small table by the door lay a neatly folded note. A note he hadn't bothered to hand to me. A note left the way you leave a receipt you don't care about. Gone for a bit. Don't wait up. No explanation. No apology. No acknowledgement of the moment he'd lost his temper. The moment his hand had lifted just enough to wound the air between us, even if it didn't fully land. It was the kind of gesture a mother never forgets, even when she excuses it in the moment out of shock, love, or sheer habit. I stood there, holding that note between my fingers, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just a quiet, clean break in the pattern of giving. I set the note aside and walked through the house slowly, taking in the details I had missed the night before. The kettle water level was lower than I would have left it. One kitchen chair was pushed too far back from the table. The cushion still held the faint shape of someone who'd sat with agitation, not conversation. A suitcase-sized rectangle of dust was disturbed near the back door, just faint enough to reveal he'd moved things quickly. I have learned to read rooms the way some people read faces. For years, especially since Harold passed, I tried to fill my silence with generosity. I bought things to make others comfortable. A big television to lure the grandkids. A new refrigerator for family dinners. A leather sofa because my son said the old one hurt his back. A smartphone added to my account because he needed help this month. Washer, dryer, recliner, cookware, bedding, countless small things that felt like giving love shape. I kept receipts for everything. Harold taught me that. He always said, paper remembers what people choose to forget. After he died, the blue folder became a companion. I kept it in the bottom drawer of my desk, filled with dated receipts, warranties, bank slips, and itemized purchases. Not because I anticipated conflict, I simply liked knowing where my life had gone, what I had built, what I had offered. But that morning, staring at the empty chair and the careless note, I realized how easily generosity can turn into expectation. How kindness can be mistaken for obligation. How a mother can slowly become invisible in the very home she pays for. I walked to the desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the blue folder. It smelled faintly of cedar and the lavender sachet tucked near it. I laid it on the dining table and opened it, one calm breath at a time. There they were. The receipts for the 65-inch television. The French door refrigerator. The leather sofa. The washer and dryer. The knife set he said he needed. The phone plan bill with his line attached. The comforter set he never said thank you for. Each purchase, each signature, each date lined up like a timeline of where my love had gone. I pulled up my phone next. The Ring camera app blinked with a notification. Motion from the night before. I tapped the video and watched the grainy image of my son moving through the doorway, carrying a backpack, returning for another item, leaving again with a hurried tilt to his shoulders. Two figures, actually. Him and someone else. Their voices low, indistinct, but unmistakably casual, like people drifting through a place that required no respect from them. Evidence. Proof. Patterns. All settling into place. I made myself tea and sat at the table, surrounded by my folder, my list, my memories. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. Age teaches you how to sit with truth, the way you sit with a guest you never invited but cannot ignore. I began writing a short list on a notepad. Note found by door. Car gone. Footage timestamp 11:12 p.m. Suitcase moved. Items missing from hall closet. No explanation, no apology. I'm not a woman who breaks things or screams into phones. I am a woman who prepares, who documents, who builds her decisions with calm hands. I looked around the quiet house, my house, and I knew I wasn't going to chase him. I wasn't going to beg for respect. I wasn't going to diminish myself just to keep the peace. Instead, I would reclaim what was mine. Quietly, methodically, without cruelty. The empty chair that morning wasn't a wound. It was a starting point. I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because of clarity. Real clarity arrives the way dawn does on a winter morning. Cold, precise, and impossible to ignore. I lay in bed listening to the house breathe around me, each familiar sound settling deeper into the silence he had left behind. The refrigerator's distant hum, the clock in the hallway marking time, even the faint creak of old wood shifting with temperature changes. All of it felt like the house itself was waiting for me to make a decision. By the time the sun began washing the kitchen in pale light, I had already made it. I wrapped my robe around myself and moved through the rooms with deliberate slowness. Every morning used to feel like a small ceremony. Coffee, slippers, lavender, the cardinal outside my window. But now each small detail seemed to glow under a new truth. I had been giving pieces of myself away, and no one had been paying attention. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text. From him. Won't be back today. Need to grab a few things later. I stared at it. No softness. No sense of responsibility. Just an announcement, as if this house were a storage unit he had paid for. As if I were a receptionist, not a mother. Before I could put the phone down, another message appeared. This one wasn't for me. It was clearly sent by mistake, one of those slip-ups where people reveal the truth without meaning to. She'll be fine. It's her money, not her. 7 words. Sharp as a pin. Light as a shrug. And somehow heavier than any hand he had ever raised in anger. Her money, not her. I read it again, and something inside me clicked into alignment. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being overly sensitive. I wasn't misreading signs. They didn't see me. They saw what I provided. And once someone decides you're just the money, they stop treating you like the person who earned it. I set the phone down gently, like it contained a fragile truth. Then I walked straight to the dining table and opened the blue folder again. If they saw only the money, then I would show them the woman who kept the records. I spread out the receipts in a careful line. Television, refrigerator, sofa, washer, dryer, the smartphone, the cookware, the recliner. Each slip of paper was a witness. Each date and signature a reminder that I had not imagined a single thing. I had paid for everything. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the digital receipts, neatly archived in my email. Order confirmations, warranties, delivery notifications. I printed them all. The pages gathered into a crisp, undeniable stack. I clipped them together with a firm, satisfying snap. Next, I opened the Ring app again. My finger hovered for only a second before tapping the thumbnail of last night's footage. There he was, moving through my doorway, shoulders stiff, eyes darting, voice low. Someone else helping him. Back to the car, then inside again. Bags leaving the house. Boxes shifting in their arms. Midnight movements meant to avoid conversation. Not a crisis. Not an emergency. A decision. And one he didn't care to explain. I replayed the footage, watching it with the calm detachment of someone who has finally stopped pretending. Then I saved each clip, labeling them clearly on my desktop. Entrance 11:12 p.m. Exit 11:20 p.m. Return 12:05 a.m. Evidence. Patterns. Truth. I placed the printed receipts, the screenshots of texts, and the list I'd written the night before into the blue folder and closed it. Then I opened a fresh notepad and titled a new page. Plan of action. I did not cry. Tears weren't useful now. I did not pace. That wasted energy. I simply sat down, pen steady in my hand, and wrote. Hire professional movers. Prepare inventory list of all items purchased. Contact utility companies. Confirm account ownership. Secure ring footage. Choose new living arrangement. Document everything. Each step calmed me. Each line reminded me that reclaiming your dignity doesn't require shouting. It requires order. It requires presence. It requires finally putting yourself in the lead role of your own life. When I finished writing, I picked up the phone and called the moving company I remembered from years ago, Maple and Sons. A friendly woman answered, her tone warm and assured. Yes, dear, I said. I'd like to schedule a full-service move. Large items. As soon as possible. She checked her schedule. Tomorrow at 9? That works perfectly. We exchanged details. When I hung up, I felt steady. Not triumphant. Steady. There is a difference. Next, I called the electric company. Then the water department. Then the cable provider. I confirmed that every single account was in my name, because of course it was, and I updated the mailing address to my post office box for safety and simplicity. After the calls, I walked through each room, touching the edges of tables, the corners of picture frames, the cool surface of the refrigerator. I wasn't saying goodbye. I was acknowledging ownership. A simple human truth that had been overlooked by those too comfortable with what I'd offered. In the living room, the sunlight fell across the empty chair again. The same chair that held the shape of last night's anger. The same chair that had been witness to a moment I could not forget. But this time, I didn't see it as a reminder of pain. I saw it as a marker. A boundary line. The moment where I stopped accepting less than respect. Tomorrow morning, movers would come. Professional. Calm. Neutral. They would take each item into their careful hands and load them into a truck. And I wouldn't apologize. I wouldn't justify. I wouldn't explain. Because everything being moved belonged to me. And the life I was about to build belonged to me too. When I finally sat down that evening, tea in hand, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a chapter preparing to close. The next morning rose bright and impossibly calm. The kind of morning that makes even an unsettled heart feel briefly steadied. I dressed early, choosing simple clothes, comfortable, familiar, the sort of outfit that lets a woman move with purpose. When I opened the blinds, the light spilled gently across the living room floor, illuminating the bare spaces I had already begun to accept as temporary. At 8:47 a.m., right on schedule, a moving truck turned into my driveway. Maple and Sons Movers. The same company Harold and I had used decades ago. The logo was different now, sleeker, but the reliability felt the same. Two men stepped out. One older, tall, with kind eyes. The other younger, sturdy, with a quiet confidence. "Good morning, ma'am," the older one said. "We're here for the full move." "Yes," I replied. "Thank you for being punctual." They followed me inside, polite and observant. I handed them my inventory list, neatly written, room by room. They looked it over with impressed nods. "You've made our job easy," the younger one said. "We'll get started right away." And just like that, the house shifted from stillness to motion. They began with the living room. The large television, cradled carefully between strong hands. The leather sofa, wrapped and lifted as if it were nothing more than a feather. I stood quietly nearby, checking each item off the list. Not hovering, just present. A witness to my own reclamation. In the kitchen, they boxed the appliances one by one. The knife set, the toaster, the cookware, the air fryer still unused. The refrigerator required teamwork, strategic angles, and steady pacing. I watched with the calm satisfaction of someone finally setting things right. Every piece taken out of the house felt like one stitch being pulled free from an old, unraveling pattern. Not painful, necessary. I felt no guilt, no hesitation, no second-guessing. This was my property, purchased by me, maintained by me, and now, rightfully being taken with me. Around mid-morning, the younger mover approached me with a question. "Ma'am, this recliner too?" I placed my hand on the chair's arm, remembering how I bought it after Harold died, a small comfort for the evenings when grief pressed too close. "Yes," I said. "That one especially." They carried it out with care. While they worked, my phone buzzed on the table. A message from my son. "When are you home? Need to grab some stuff." Not an apology. Not a moment of recognition. Just a claim, as though nothing had happened. I didn't respond. I didn't feel the pull to explain myself. The silence between us felt cleaner than any words I could offer. By noon, the house was nearly bare. The movers wiped their hands and approached me at the doorway. "That's everything from the list," the older one said. "All loaded and secured. Where to next?" I hesitated, not from uncertainty, but from honesty. I wasn't driving to my new home yet. "There's one more stop before we unload." They nodded without question. Good movers understand that people carry more than belongings. They carry stories. I handed the older man a small card with an address written neatly on it. He glanced at it, then met my eyes with a quiet understanding. "We'll follow your lead, ma'am." I locked the front door behind me. The sound of the key turning felt different today. Not the closing of something lost, but the securing of something reclaimed. When I slid into my car, the seat felt like mine again. My hands steadied on the steering wheel. In the mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself. An older woman, yes, but also a woman who looked firmer, clearer, more present than she had in years. I started the engine and began to drive. The moving truck followed steadily behind me, like a loyal shadow. I wasn't heading toward conflict. I wasn't heading toward revenge. I was heading toward truth. Toward a place where my voice would be documented. Where facts mattered more than excuses. Where clarity had a name and a badge. The police station. The police station was quiet in that particular way public buildings often are mid-afternoon. Steady, neutral, unbothered by the storms people carry through its doors. I parked close to the entrance and sat for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, feeling the weight of the day settle into something surprisingly soft. Not relief. Not victory. Just readiness. I stepped out of the car, the movers waiting patiently in the truck behind me. Their presence felt like a gentle reassurance, steady witnesses to a truth I was finally ready to speak aloud. The automatic doors slid open, and cool air washed over me as I entered the lobby. A receptionist glanced up with polite curiosity. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "I'd like to document a property matter," I said. My voice was calm, almost quiet, but it carried the certainty of a woman who had spent the last 24 hours collecting every piece of truth she needed. She gestured toward a small seating area. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." I sat down, the blue folder held firmly in my lap. That folder had become something of a companion, its edges worn from years of careful handling, its contents a map of all the things I had given, and all the things I was now reclaiming. My fingers rested on it like a heartbeat. There was no shaking, no doubt. After a few minutes, an officer in his 50s walked toward me. His face was kind, seasoned, the sort of face that had seen both the best and worst in people. "Mrs. Weaver?" he asked. "Yes. I'm Officer Harlan. Come on back to my office. We can talk there." I followed him into a small room decorated with fishing photos and children's drawings, signs of a life lived outside the uniform. He motioned for me to sit. When I placed the blue folder on the desk, his eyebrows lifted slightly, not in judgment, but in recognition. "You look prepared," he said. "I've had time to think." I opened the folder and laid everything out with deliberate care. The receipts in chronological order, the printed emails, the neatly written inventory list, the screenshots of text messages, the ring footage thumbnails. Each piece settled on the desk like a stone placed gently into still water. "I need a record," I explained. "A clear official record that the items being moved are mine. All purchased by me. All documented." He nodded and pulled out his notebook. "Tell me what happened." I spoke simply. I didn't embellish. I didn't soften. I told him about the note my son left. The midnight movements caught on camera. The message that had not been meant for me. It's her money, not her. I explained how long I had supported him, how many items I had purchased, how much I had chosen to overlook. Not because I was naive, but because I was a mother. Officer Harlan listened with the kind of patience that feels like protection. When I showed him the receipts, he checked each date and signature. When I showed him the footage, he watched closely, nodding as he noted the times. When I described my plan to move the items, he didn't question it. "Everything you've shown is clear," he said finally. "This is your property. You have every right to move it, and you've gone about this the correct way." He filled out the incident report, asked a few final clarifying questions, then handed me a copy of the case number. "If anyone challenges you later," he said, "refer them to this report. You've done everything right, Mrs. Weaver." Those words settled inside me like warm light. Not triumph. Validation. After I thanked him and gathered my papers, I stepped back into the lobby. The movers stood when they saw me, their expressions respectful, waiting for my signal. "All set?" the older one asked. "Yes," I said. "Let's head to the new place." They nodded and followed me out. As I drove away from the station with the moving truck behind me, I didn't look back. There was nothing left in that old house that belonged to me except the lessons I had learned. My new home was a modest apartment in a senior community, a place filled with warm lights, potted plants, and people who said hello to strangers. I had toured it quietly days before everything happened, not knowing then that my heart already understood what I needed. When the movers brought in the furniture, the space transformed slowly into something bright and peaceful. The sofa fit perfectly against the windowed wall. The recliner settled into a corner that caught morning light. The refrigerator hummed its steady welcome. The television stood on a simple stand, waiting for quiet evenings. One by one, the pieces of my life found their places again. When the job was finished, the older mover smiled at me with a kind sincerity. "You handled today with a lot of grace, ma'am. More than most would." I smiled back. Sometimes grace is the only thing that keeps us steady. They wished me well and left me in the calm hush of my new home. That evening, the community held a small welcome dinner in the courtyard. A long table covered in simple dishes, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fruit salad. Neighbors introduced themselves with warm hands and easy smiles. Someone cracked a joke about losing reading glasses twice a day. Another woman told me about her grandchildren who visited every Sunday. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was sitting among people who saw me. Not what I could give, not what I could pay for, not what they could expect from me. Just me. When night settled, I walked back to my apartment, turned on a lamp, and sat in my recliner. The room glowed softly. The silence was gentle, not lonely. A silence that belonged to me. And it struck me then, quietly and completely. I had reclaimed not just my belongings, but my dignity, my space, myself. People often think strength is loud. But the older I get, the more I understand. True strength is quiet. It is the boundary you draw in calm handwriting. It is the decision no one sees coming because you're done warning them. It is the silence after you choose yourself. If my story touched something in your heart, write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you can walk with me into the next story.